So this video has me both a little bit nervous and it's gonna hurt a little bit. Mainly because we are going to be chopping this window in half and tinting it with this stuff right here. Many people have asked me about Lexan's carbon film off their website specifically, and some of you recognize just this door in general because we ended up putting Geoshield C2 carbon film on it, and we painstakingly trimmed off the top edge to look completely flush with the window. So I really don't want to ruin this window because I put a lot of time into it and it looks phenomenal, but for the sake of tint science, we need to figure out if the value prop on C2 is really worth the money because it's 3 times as expensive. You can get this Lexan here for 100 bucks, or you can buy Geoshield for 300 bucks. So we're gonna put apples to apples, carbon film to carbon film, budget to expensive. Which one is better for you? And is it really worth the money? So before we go ahead and chop this, can we just give a quick RAP to this beautiful top edge here? We get to keep half of it, but I'm sad because I put a lot of work into this. So let's take a quick moment. All right, let's do it. We're just gonna go ahead and slice it, and I think I'm gonna tint this half with Lexan so we have a real good chunk, and then I let this taper off for the rest of it. So let's just go and try and keep this as straight as we can so we don't look like a hack. Oh, the things that I do for this channel when nobody really asks me to. Okay, so this is definitely an interesting look, something that I don't think I've ever seen this before. So we're just gonna kind of speed through this next part, which is gonna be tinting it. Not a whole lot to say. I'm gonna try and tint it how I normally do, and then we're gonna pull it outside, and that's where we're really gonna be able to do a fair comparison. Okay, so I gotta be very real with you guys. Of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased from the get-go in this, right? Geoshield, I like their film, I'm using their film, of course I want it to be better, I'm paying more for the film. But when I pulled this car out and looked at that door, it's a tough choice. Lexan looks really good. They say it's a carbon film, and just pulling it straight out into the sunlight, like, it looks good. So we have it sitting right here, and then I just kind of let it sit and looked at it really close, and I have some thoughts on it. There is a difference, and we're gonna go over that right now. All right, so we have it outside, and we have a little cross here. I'll explain that in a minute, but as you'll remember, we did Geoshield on this side, and then we did Lexan on this side, so let's step over and look inside, looking out. And you'll notice once my camera adjusts, so some of this is going to have to do with camera white balance to really illustrate color, but as we move back and forth, Geoshield, Lexan, you'll notice Lexan right off the bat, it looks a little bit lighter, it looks a little bit more of a pale, and then there's just a little bit more color going on with Geoshield, which when you see this in person, it really looks good, but this film still looks really good. But when you just pit one against the other, I mean, honestly, it'd be kind of a toss-up between the two until we go ahead and we close the door. So look at where that corner is on the film, right in here. You see that haze spot? That goes through the entire length of the film. So that is what we call low angle haze. It's much more apparent on a lesser quality film. And then when we go over here, we have a slight amount, but it is significantly better. Low angle haze is one of the crippling factors of carbon films. Damn, you can really see, ignore my ugly cut edge, but you can really see how much more apparent it is on a less expensive film. So that is the biggest noticeable difference. The less noticeable difference is going to be the heat reduction. There is more heat reduction, I'm happy to report, on Geoshield versus Lexan. I should get a solar meter to prove this point better, but with the temperature gauge that I have, I'll shine it right on the door panel. Okay, so I wanted to do a quick temperature read of the back paneling versus the front to see if there's any sort of significant heat reduction. And then I can feel a little bit of a difference between the two. It's nothing like major, but it's a handful of degrees difference, so that's good to note. Okay, so you have to forgive me. I'm filming this part on my phone, but it actually illustrates my point really well. I'm filming on a Samsung phone, and they tend to over-exaggerate their colors a little bit, but it really can show you a clear difference between Geoshield and Lexan here. There's just a little bit more color pop on Geoshield versus Lexan. Now, if I was a customer, sat in my car, got this, I'd have no problems with the coloring whatsoever. But it really comes down to, for me, that low angle haze. Carbons have come a long way, and cheaping out on carbon means that you're still getting that added haze. And especially when you see that versus factory glass, like what's on the back of here, you would see a big noticeable difference. So your front windows would look a little hazy in sunlight, and your back windows would look, you know, perfectly clear. So I'm glad to see the improvements in the C2. I wish there was a more obvious difference between the two. You know, is it really worth 3 times the price for it? Well, you know, when you break that down into a full installation, to be honest, that's not going to change my price point a whole lot anyways as an installer. But when you're buying the film, yeah, I could see starting out with this stuff, get going, and then maybe looking at some better films. That's the way that I would position myself, because there is a lot more that comes with just a more expensive film. You're talking about a better company and better support overall. All right, so there you have it. That is the difference between Lexan and Geoshield. So 2 steep carbon competitions. Lexan at its price point is a pretty fair value prop. It's hard to argue. You know, it's got a good color. It seems to reject a little bit of heat. And at the end of the day, when you pull that out, your customers, I think, are going to be happy with it. But for me personally, I'm still gonna stick with the C2. I think it's got a little bit more pop to it as far as the color goes. And that low angle haze is just a deal breaker for me. So on the Lexan, it's just, I've had to redo windows in the past. Your customers are gonna have to live with something like that, and just shortchanging yourself on a film to save a couple of bucks versus trying to really position yourself into a better film. I think Geoshield C2 is definitely worth the difference. So I'm going to stick with that for now. That's what you're going to see in these videos, and that's what we're going to be installing in the studio. But now we at least understand some clear differences between the two. I mean, and we didn't even get into longevity and support behind that. So that's just 2 films put on a window back to back. What do they look like? What do they compare like? So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.